since the independence. They are quite as poor, and quite as ignorant, and quite as degraded as they were in 1808, and if they do raise a little grain of their own, they are so hardly taxed that the privilege is as naught. May 2nd. We returned from Mexico this morning, having gone in to attend the ball given at the French Minister's on the day of Louis Philippe. It was very pretty, and we stayed till it was very late. We met with such a cordial reception from all our friends, whom we have not seen for a month, that we are tempted to believe ourselves as much missed in Mexico as they say we are. The Señora L and the E s were amongst the best dressed Mexican ladies last night, the latter in white crape and diamonds, and the other in black blonde over rose colour, also with diamonds. The Señora A, who went with us, looked very pretty in a white blonde dress, with a small black velvet turban rolled round with large diamonds and pearls. There were a great number of small crimson velvet turbans, and an amazing number of black blonde dresses. There were certainly some very pretty women. The corps diplomatique went in uniform. 7th. Abeselta, a favourite Spanish actor, died a few days ago, and as C n took several boxes on the night of a play given for the benefit of his widow, we went in to the theatre on Saturday last. We are now looking out for another house in Mexico, for when the rainy season begins we shall find this too far from the city for C n, who is obliged to be there constantly. We ventured to take a walk alone yesterday morning through the lanes, down to San Angel and Coyoacan, for which piece of imprudence we were severely reprehended, and today, it appears, that two women had been robbed and ill-treated on the road near here, so we are too ready to subscribe to the renewal of our sentence of imprisonment in the house and orchard, when we have no gentlemen with us, but it must be confessed that it takes greatly from the charms of a country life not to be able to walk out fearlessly. The quietness and stillness of this place is incredible. There is actually not a sound in the air, not a sight but a ragged Indian. The garden is in great beauty. The apricots are ripe and abundant. The roses are in full blow, and there is a large pomegranate tree at the gate of the orchard, which is one mass of ponçeau blossom. It is much warmer in the middle of the day this summer than it was last. We spent a pleasant day lately at a great hacienda a few leagues from this, belonging to a Spanish millionaire, on occasion of a shooting party. We went there to breakfast, and afterwards set off on horseback, sitting sideways on men's saddles, to see the sport. It would have been very agreeable but for the heat. The sportsmen were not very successful; saw a flight of rose-coloured flamingoes, who sailed high over their heads unhurt; killed some very handsome birds, called trigueros, with beautiful yellow plumage, and some ducks. The trigueros are considered a delicacy. We rode with the administrador all around the estate, which is very productive and profitable. He told us that they sell in Mexico annually $15,000 worth of corn and $10,000 worth of milk, sending in this produce in canoes by the canal which passes this way. We dismounted from our horses in a green meadow covered with daisies and buttercups, which from association I prefer to the tuberoses and pomegranate blossom, which now adorn the gardens. The Señor gave us an excellent dinner a la Espagnole, after which I made an attempt to fire at some birds which shook their tails and flew away in the most contemptuous manner. The new secretary of legation, Señor T, and the new attaché, Señor G, have just arrived in Mexico. 10th. The Baron and Madame de , with their secretary, the Count de B, came out yesterday morning unexpectedly to breakfast, and spent the day with us. 13th. We went out with C n last evening to take a walk, when a man rushed by us in a state of great agitation, and on going further we met some workmen, who told us that an Indian labourer had stabbed a man in the next field, and that he had died before a padre could be procured. We heard the cries of his wife and children, and A, crossing the ditch that bordered the field, went to see the man. He was a master workman or director, and had found fault with one of the men for his idleness. High words ensued, and the labourer, probably the man who had passed us, drew his knife and stabbed him. He was lying stone dead, with his hand half cut through in his efforts to defend himself. A asked an administrador who was standing near what would be done to the guilty man. "Probably nothing," said he, shrugging his shoulders. "We have no judges to punish crime." This encounter, as you may believe, took away from us all inclination to pursue our rambles. There is a pretty farmhouse in the village, in which we took shelter the other day from a shower of rain. The farmers are civil and respectful, a superior kind of people, with good manners rather above their station. The daughters are good looking, and the house clean and neat. One of the girls gave me an account of a nocturnal visit which the robbers paid them last winter. She showed me the little room where she was alone and asleep, when her mother and sister, who slept in the chamber adjoining, being wakened by the breaking in of their door, sprang out of the window to make their escape, and she was left in the house alone. She jumped out of bed and bolted the door. Her room had no other egress, and there she held a parley with these night visitors, promising to unlock every drawer and closet if they would wait until she put on her clothes, and would do her no personal injury. The agreement was made, and they kept their word. They cleared the house of every article it contained, leaving nothing but the blanket in which the girl had wrapped herself. All their clothes, household utensils, money, everything was carried off with astonishing precision, and having made her swear not to move till they had time to leave the village, they paid her no further attention. The other women, who had given the alarm, found no one inclined to move in the middle of the night against a party whose numbers their fears had probably magnified. The administrador gave us an amusing account this evening of a visit which a band of no less than 30 robbers once ventured to pay this strong and well defended hacienda. He was living there alone, that is, without the family, and had just barred and bolted everything for the night, but had not yet locked the outer gate, when looking out from his window into the courtyard by moonlight, he saw a band of robbers ride up to the door. He instantly took his measures, and seizing the great keys, ran up the little stair that leads to the azotea, locking the gate by which he passed, and calling to the captain by name, for the robbers were headed by a noted chieftain, requested to know what he wanted at that hour of the night. The captain politely begged him to come downstairs and he would tell him, but the agent, strong in the possession of his great keys, and well knowing the solidity of the iron-barred windows, continued his parley in a high tone. The captain rode around, examined everything with a practised eye, and found that it would require a regular siege to make good his entry. He threatened, entreated, observed that he would be content with a small sum of money, but all in vain. There stood the sturdy administrador on the housetop, and there sat the captain on his horse below, something like the fox and the crow, but the agent with the keys was wiser than the crow and her cheese, for no cajoling would induce him to let them out of his grasp, and worse than all, shooting him would have done them no good. At last the captain, finding himself entirely outwitted, took off his hat, politely wished the agent a very good night, drew off his men, and departed. Another time, being also alone, he was attacked in broad daylight by 2 men who came under pretence of buying pulque, but having time to get hold of a sword, he overpowered one, which frightened the other, upon which they both began to laugh, and assured him it was mere experiment to see what he would do, a perfect jest, which he pretended to believe, but advised them not to try it again, as it was too good a joke to be repeated. Señor pointed out to us the other day a well-known robber captain who was riding on the high road with a friend. He had the worst looking, most vulgar, and most villainous face I ever saw, a low-lived and most unpoetic looking ruffian, fat and sallow. We saw a horribly ugly man today, and were told he was a lobo, the name given here to the Zambos, who are the most frightful human beings that can be seen. La Güera Rodriguez told us that on an estate of hers, one woman of that race was in the habit of attending church, and that she was so fearfully hideous, the priest had been obliged to desire her to remain at home, because she distracted the attention of the congregation. We spent yesterday at the house of the Minister at San Angel, where he gave us and the Minister and his family a beautiful breakfast. How consistent everything looks in a good English house, so handsome without being gaudy, the plates so well cleaned, the servants so well trained. June 8th.